Okay, councillors, if you could take your seats, please. Okay, good evening all. I'm Councillor Paul Wilby, the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Service team will assess the situation and give further instruction on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the council, but if anyone else is intending to record the proceedings, can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. I see no indications. I'd also advise members that they should address the meeting aware of the microphones, and that's also to the speakers here tonight, and the meeting aware of the microphones, and remind you that they to turn your microphone off when they're finished speaking. To the members of the public here tonight, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please turn the microphone on and then turn it off once you've finished. Thank you. Apologies for absence. I believe we have Councillor Cleater and Councillor Faguch. Okay. Are there any substitute members? Nope. Okay. Are there any visiting members?
Councillor Springett to speak on item 15.
Thank you.
Councillor Simon Wells to speak on the Lancet Lane development.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, moving on to item 4, items withdrawn from the agenda. That's great. There are no items recommended to be withdrawn from the agenda tonight. Item 5, the adjourned meeting, if needed, will be held on the 26th of June if required. Let's hope not. Okay, urgent items, you'll see this little pack on your desk. Okay, I intend to take all urgent items, written and verbal, from the officers. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 7, are there any disclosures by members and officers?
Thank you, Chair. Could I disclose a disclosable pecuniary interest in item 21? I plan to leave the room while that is discussed and voted on, as I'm the applicant.
Thank you, Councillor Ridding.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Councillor Summerfield.
Thank you. Item 16, I have previously discussed this an enforcement situation in the 2023 with Hunton Parish Council, so I will withdraw from the room for that particular item. And item 18, I don't believe I'm conflicted on this one. Previous planning applications on this site have been discussed at Hunton Parish Council, but not this one.
Thank you, Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Just in case, I received a phone call from one of the executives on item 13 yesterday. I have not yet called them back. Thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you. There are 3 items the Staplehurst. I'm obviously the Borough Council of Staplehurst, but I don't sit on the planning committee. I didn't even know they were coming through, so though I will be sitting here normally talking and voting as necessary. Thank you.
So, Councillor Perry, just to clarify, you're a member of the Parish Council, but you don't sit on their planning committee?
No, I don't sit on their planning committee.
Thank you, Councillor.
I avoid it like the plague. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a member of Bearsted Parish Council, but I do not sit on its planning committee, and therefore on item 15, Hellbeck House, I intend to speak and vote on that item.
Thank you, Councillor Spooner. Councillor Reardon.
Sorry. Just to declare that I'm a member of Staplehurst Parish Council, but I do not sit on the planning committee. So on the items apart from item 21, where I'll be leaving the room, I plan to speak and vote on those matters.
Thank you, Councillor Riddle.
Thank you, Chair.
Is that all? Okay, moving on then. We'll move on to lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? Again, I'll start with you, Councillor Reardon, and work our way around.
Thank you, Chair. I've been lobbied on items 14 and item 17.
Items 14, 15 and 17.
Items 15 and 17.
Item 17, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, item 14 and 17, and also the Balfour Winery under the deferred items. But a long email about that. Thank you.
A ditto, exactly the same.
Yes, item 14 and 17.
Thank you, Chair. I have been lobbied on items 13, 14, 15, including a discussion with officers regarding this subject on the procedure of the case. I've also been lobbied on item 17 and 19, and for 19, I'm also the ward councillor.
Items 14 and 17. Thank you.
Item 14, 17 and also item 18 on deferred items, which is the solar park.
Okay, it's easy to say all for me. Okay, moving on. I move that all items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Is this agreed? Thank you, councillors. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of May 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. There are no petitions this evening. And then I call upon Rob Jarman, Head of Development Management, to provide an update on the deferred items.
Thanks, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. On the first one in the George Yalding, discussions are continuing with the applicant, but the applicant is more than willing to submit a contemporary flood risk assessment. And one of the appeals on your papers shows that an appeal was dismissed because the same applicant didn't submit a flood risk assessment. I should say an up-to-date one. Secondly, with regard to the Churchill Boardman Chelsea site, discussions are continuing with the applicant. And with the last one, which went to the last planning committee, as you know, that was deferred for a dormice survey because of the hazel hedging there. And secondly, because of concerns about the impact on the sort of microclimate for the vineyard adjacent. And I do believe that I saw a number of emails last night where a number of councillors had been lobbied by the applicant. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. Okay, moving on then. Get straight into it. I call upon Francis to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This application is for the construction of a 3-bedroom end of terrace property. The committee resolved at the February meeting to defer the decision on the application to enable the applicant submit a parking stress survey in accordance with the Lambeth methodology, and also for officers to review compliance with the private amenity space standards. Following the committee deferral, the applicant submitted an appeal against non-determination to the Planning Inspectorate. This means the final decision would be taken by the Planning Inspector. The council is now required to inform the planning inspectorate of what decision it would have made if it were determining the application. So to move on briefly to the request made by members in relation to the parking stress survey. The applicant has failed to provide a parking stress survey. The submitted plans show the proposal meets off-street parking standards. However, as the physical access to the parking space is not guaranteed, officers have assessed the proposal with 0 off-street parking. Officers have also conducted a site visit on 2 occasions to assess the parking capacity within Orchard Place. In the event that there is no space within Orchard Place for parking, there is unrestricted parking on Heath Road. On that basis, officers consider that the application is acceptable in terms of parking. The second issue raised by members relates to the compliance with the private amenity space standards. In terms of compliance with these standards, the garden space provided in the submitted layout is approximately 48.2 square meters. This would be slightly smaller compared to the floor area taken up by the building itself, which is about 53 square meters. Given that neighboring properties have similar rear amenity spaces, officers consider on balance that the application is acceptable on that basis, and there is insufficient grounds to refuse a planning permission. Officers on this basis recommend that the application is approved subject to conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have Miss Briggs, objector? Oh, a statement, sorry. Councillor Cricket? And then actually you got your 3 minutes straight after it as well, Councillor.
Good evening, Chair. So communication from Miss Briggs. Okay, Miss Briggs, who lives adjacent to the applicant, has on a driveway put some light posts, which has raised issues with number 8, and she has been politely asked to remove them as they cannot access her property easily, because they need the corner of her drive to access theirs at number 8. She has sent me some plans. Obviously, I can't show you those, but also in the mix opposite the proposed development is obviously 2 garages and parking bays. The one nearest the application has now availed themselves of a very shiny 4x4 utility vehicle, which is also causing problems. And number 8 has great difficulty gaining access or egress from their property. They then go on to another list of things, which I will now start my 3 minutes, if I may. So the parking stress survey was a 2-day snapshot at 6 p.m, which is felt is not a typical reflection of what the parking's like during the day. The suggestion that parking on Heath Road is absolutely preposterous. We're in the process of having double yellow lines put down there. In consultation with Highways, it is a dangerous road, a very busy road, and would not accept parked vehicles along it. Also, there has been a question, where would number 8 keep the dustbins? There is no provision should this development go ahead. There's no, and they've got no access to the rear. Also, the lack of drainage provision. I feel that there's no clarification as to what drainage would take place. Yeah, basically it just boils down to lack of drainage and a likelihood of disputes between neighbours over access, because at the current moment in time, people will have to drive over the grounds of number 8 to get to the proposed 8A. We just see there's going to be a lot of problems in the future. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Okay, moving on. Then councillor Summersgill, the indicate.
Thank you. Can I agree with the speaker just now that Heath Road is not a road that anyone is going to safely park on at any time of the day. It's very, very congested, and there are several accidents further near the crossroads. I would just like clarification that in 209, based on my site visit, it's unlikely parking spaces would be found within the cul-de-sac to accommodate any vehicles. Yet in the additional comment on parking standards, officer site visits have shown there is on-street capacity in Orchard Place to accommodate demand from the new house. I can't quite reconcile those two statements, and especially the picture. If we know that under the highway code there's no parking within 10 metres of a junction, it looks to me like people are parking up to about 10 metres from the junction already on that picture.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Francis, we'll come back on those questions.
Thank you for the question. In relation to the parking for the site, as indicated in the report, we did visit the site on 3 different occasions after 6 and 7 p.m. And the report indicates that within the cul-de-sac itself, the parking situation there was that all the existing parking spaces, almost all of them, had been taken. But then, as the report indicates, along the access onto into the site, there was between 2 to 3 parking spaces on each occasion that we visited the site. As you indicated about the 10 meters from the entrance to Heath Road, there is no yellow lines in that location restricting parking in the locations that are indicated in the photographs. So there is no reason why our residents within the cul-de-sac can't currently park there. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Can I respond to that?
Yep.
As I said, under the highway code, you don't have to have yellow lines. You should not park within 10 metres of a junction. Therefore, you can be ticketed for that. But I still don't understand. Officer site visits have shown there is on-street capacity to accommodate demand from the new house in the urgent update, with the statement it's unlikely parking spaces would be found within the cul-de-sac in 209 of the report. Are you saying that parking spaces within the cul-de-sac are down by the property, because the other picture on above 209 doesn't seem to show any parking down in that corner of the cul-de-sac with cars already there?
Thank you. As indicated in the report, there are no restrictions on parking along Heath Road, especially in front of the local centers, local center just before the branch into can't remember the name of the street, apologies. And so we assume that in the event of the occupiers not having been able to park within the cul-de-sac, that there is sufficient place not only along Heath Road, but there are parking spaces along other neighboring roads to park. I think when we assess applications of this nature, we look at policy LT4, which deals with allows flexibility in terms of minimum and maximum parking standards. So on this occasion, we believe that given that the parking has actually been provided for the building, notwithstanding the issues with the access into that parking space, we cannot justify a refusal of that application on the basis that there is no parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Summerskill. Just to play devil's advocate, the access, you just mentioned it and went on to it. If this was a bigger site, access would be more of an issue, and we would probably refuse it due to not being able to access it. Obviously, I'm not seeing a lot of people wanting to speak on this as such, but to try and bolster Councillor Summerskill, I think it's trying to go for a refusal. Are you trying to go for a refusal, or are you trying to go as per the papers, Councillor?
I would put forward refusal on the grounds that there is no ability to park in the area.
Yes, it's not parking, it's the access to the parking.
And access.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the basis that you tried. So would that be something that we could build a refusal on? I know this is going to an inspector already, so it's more than all right.
Sorry, I think I said this before. I think you said this to yourself as well, Chairman. Clearly, you can't get 2 cars parked over there, or we can't guarantee it simply because it relies on people parking in a precise location on a private property. And clearly, planning doesn't get into those sort of realms unless you were to create some kind of drop curb or new road or something. Well, it's just impractical and there's no guarantees. So we are saying it's contrary to the Kent County Council parking standards, and because Maidstone hasn't got its own, it adopts Kent County Council's. But what is being said is that there's no harm caused because, as I understand it, there's space on Heath Road and neighbouring roads, and there's a dispute as to whether or not there's space in the cul-de-sac. Just bear with me. I think I did say last time, stress surveys, there's obviously a defined methodology. It's called the Lambeth methodology, and that specifically and unsurprisingly specifies the hours where you undertake them. And obviously, I think it's something like 2 o'clock in the morning. So obviously, not many people are going to be out and about at 2 o'clock in the morning. So there is a bit of an argument as to whether or not sort of 6 o'clock in the evening is a reasonable time to undertake a survey. But like Francis said, the applicant, or now the appellant, has said he's not going to do it anyway. If you were minded to refuse, I would specifically refer to the lack of evidence submitted in that a proper stress survey in accordance with the Lambeth methodology has not been submitted. And secondly, it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but you know, we have to have standards, and the garden size standard is below. I know as officers, our argument is that it's not far below the standard, but nevertheless, it is below the standard. So if you want to go down those lines, I would go for those 2 reasons.
Anyone else want to come in? Councillor Spooner.
Can I offer a slightly different view of this? Looking at the drawing or the layout on page 49 of the papers, the applicant has indicated 4 car parking spaces, and it seems to me the issue in dispute, and the critical issue is whether he has rights of access over a bit of land, sliver of land, coloured blue, which we think is not in his ownership. It could well be that with the passage of time, he could prove he has a right of access over that if he goes to court. Basically, we are a planning authority. We are making decisions on pure planning criteria. The issue of the ownership of that strip of land is a legal land ownership matter, which is the responsibility of the applicant. And if the inspector grants permission for this, which I personally think he probably will, it's then down to the applicant to sort out his land ownership problems. And he won't be the first applicant to ever get a permission which he can't implement because he finds he doesn't own all the land. That is the situation we're in, but as a local planning authority, I personally think we should have approved this, but we can't because it's out of our hands. But there we are. That's just my tuppence halfpenny's worth. Thank you for listening.
Councillor Spooner, Mr. Jarman.
Sorry, perhaps I didn't explain it. The 2 parking spaces are for the existing properties. Sorry, the existing property number 8. The red line is naturally shown. Obviously, it's smaller than the existing property. And what I'm saying is, you know, if we were to accept that 2 cars could get onto that new hard surfaced area, then we would have to put on a standard condition saying the space should be kept for 2 parking spaces. But one of the tests is enforceability. And what I'm saying is, if cars aren't parked, and these are private individuals, if they're not parked, well, in one case, something like almost half a metre from the actual front wall of the house, then the cars can't get in. So it would fail the test of a condition. And I'd also argue that it's not reasonable to put a condition on a completely separate property, because it's people's individual rights to park on their driveway.
Fully accept.
So that what we're relying on is that the parking can't be guaranteed, for want of a better word. So what we're saying is, but it doesn't matter because you can park in the cul-de-sac on Heath Road or on neighbouring roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. Anybody else? No. Okay. So I also do agree with Councillor Spooner. Obviously, there's a legal issue here. When I was playing devil's advocate before, it's about to see where we could go with it. This would be slightly different if the applicant was the person in number 8, because obviously then you could guarantee that the legality of that could be implemented as well to go with it. But however, I think we would lose this on appeal because at the moment there is some parking within the close. We're not too clear on what parking there is actually in there. So unfortunately, I will move it as per the papers. Okay, thank you, Councillor Harwood. Okay. I must see no one else coming in with an amendment. So on that note, I'll move to the vote. All in favour? Five, 4. Those against? 2 against. That is approved. Okay, thank you, councillors. Moving on then. Item 15. Okay, I call upon Sam Crowley to introduce the item, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The site's located 55 metres from Maystone's urban boundary. The site has a physical, visual and functional link to the urban area and is considered a more developed and sustainable location Presently, the building has been subject to a number of extensions, which has resulted in a small area of maintained lawn to the northwest, which currently has little contribution to character and appearance. There's amenity space provided to the southeast, the centre of the plot, and the southwest currently. So the proposal is for a single-storey rear extension to provide 5 additional rooms and an infill to provide an extension to the existing communal area. For the assessment, the local plan review supports development or extension of care homes in sustainable locations in the countryside. In terms of character and appearance of the area, the existing grassed area does not contribute great value to character and appearance of the countryside. Although concerns have been raised relating to the loss of the last vestige of greenery, in order to ameliorate this and support need for expansion of elderly residential space, a condition has been added which will secure further green space on site. There are no space standards for accommodation for elderly residential homes, and in terms of amenity of outdoor space, the current grassed area is not accessible to residents and is currently fenced off as the ramp is a hazard. The proposed plans incorporate a smaller area of green space at natural ground level, which is landscaped and accessible to residents, rather than the existing elevated space. This is in addition to the further green space we've conditioned elsewhere on site. The proposed increase in residents would not significantly impact neighbour amenity, highways or parking or other material planning constraints. So therefore, on balance, considered acceptable and recommended approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, moving on to the applicant, Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members. The application seeks planning permission for single-storey extensions to the rear of the care home to enable 5 extra bedrooms to be provided for the much-needed care of elderly residents within the borough, along with a residents' lounge for their enjoyment. Both extensions would be of single-storey design. The report confirms the extension would not cause any harm to the amenities of surrounding properties, and the application complies with policy which seeks to support business uses such as care homes within the borough, including its more rural locations. There has only been one objection to the application, which is addressed in the report before you. The application is supported by all professional consultees, including the Environmental Protection Team, and KCC Ecology. Bearsted Parish Council recommend approval. I appreciate that Councillor Springett has called the application to committee due to concerns regarding the removal of the existing green space and overdevelopment. These concerns have been discussed with your officers. As members will appreciate, there is continued demand for elderly care within the borough, exacerbated by the closure of smaller care homes, where these become less sustainable to run. The continued demand for space is increasingly required to be met by either new large facilities or by the expansion of existing care homes that the council supports within the local plan. In terms of development of 5 additional bedrooms on the area of garden, at present this space is elevated relative to the existing building and surrounded by a dwarf wall that is not therefore accessible to residents. The rear extension includes a new landscaped area to the rear of the existing building, and this would be on a level threshold to the building itself. The courtyard and garden within it would therefore be more accessible for residents, which includes a significant number of residents that either use a wheelchair or a walker. Discussions took place with officers concerning the potential to reduce hard standing elsewhere on the site, with it at one time suggested that the area car parking could be reduced. This would however create possible highway concern. The current car park is needed for the care home, and the need for it would not be diminished by adding a further 5 bedrooms. There are also other patio areas within the grounds, including one that has recently been upgraded. These are essential for the home to allow access for residents that is safe to outdoor space for them to enjoy. The applicant would be willing to enhance landscaping by introducing further landscaping and planters, particularly within the courtyard areas. And the applicant would be more than willing to accept a condition to secure this. The site does, however, benefit from mature landscaping along its boundaries that would preserve the rural setting of the site and its surroundings. And the single-storey extensions to rear would not therefore impact upon the landscape setting of this part of Bearsted. You will also see the applicant is committed to the provision of 20% biodiversity net gain on the site, which is confirmed in detail in paragraph 6.5 of the report. This would include enhancing the remaining grasslands into a higher valued grassland, planting 6 trees, and the existing bramble scrub will be enhanced into a mixed scrub, and this would also be secured by condition. Taking these factors into account,
having regard to the conditions regarding biodiversity net gain and the condition relating to enhanced landscaping, I'd ask you to support the recommendation for Planning Commission to be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms Hardley. Councillor Vance, bring it.
Thank you. It was interesting to note in the last application, you had a discussion on the minimum garden space compared to internal floor space. I thought that was most interesting. I call this application because I'm aware of just what is being proposed and permitted here. It's a very minor extension. The original property was a house sitting in a large garden. Over the years, it's become a nursing home and has been extended extensively. This proposal almost completes the disappearance of the whole site, and I mean the whole site, under either buildings or hard surfacing. And I just want members to ask themselves, when is enough on what we permit? The raised grass area with a ramp has been unused for some time, but actually could have been made into a wonderful small nature garden for the residents to enjoy and benefit wildlife. The residents of Hillbeck House mainly suffer from dementia. This area could have been made into a sensory garden, but no, profit comes first. What is proposed now builds on that last remaining bit of green. A nearby resident informs me that a large oak tree, which would have been in the way of this development, was felled relatively recently. So I question the statement that 20% net gain for biodiversity has been properly achieved to take account of the lost biodiversity when the mature oak tree was felled. Local Plan Review Policy SP15 refers to regard being given to, amongst other things, mass, bulk and site coverage. Figure 1 in your papers, and indeed the aerial photograph shown by the officer, figure 1 shows the original site layout with the house sitting in a large garden, but the aerial photo showed by the officer shows just how much of the site is now covered by hard surfacing. That little bit of green in the top left corner is the last bit of grass left. So it's nearly 100% built on or hard surfaced. And this really is not acceptable. In figure 6.21, you can see the entire site. There's not a lot of room for nature anywhere. Members, I don't expect you to refuse this application, but I really would like an informative added just to send a message that it's considered this site is now sufficiently overdeveloped that no further intensification will be approved. How long before they come back to put a second story on top of these 5 bedrooms? There is no green space, virtually no green space left, and it's a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Springett. Councillor Spooner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are a planning authority, and the big issue here is weighing up the need for retirement rest homes against nature conservation, biodiversity, etc., etc. I was disappointed to see this application, and I've agonised over it. As Councillor Springett has so eloquently explained, this site has been developed quite considerably over the last 30, 40 years. We now have what I will call a quart in a pint pot, and the pot is now full to the brim. It is almost entirely concreted over and built over. Fortunately, it is incredibly well screened from the road, so the public aren't not that aware of it. But I think it's a great pity that there are no more or no better green areas within that site. I'm reluctantly prepared to recommend the application be approved. I just cannot think of any reasons for refusing it. But I would wonder if we could give delegated authority to the officers to try and negotiate a further upgrading in the landscaping, the tree planting, anything else to introduce some more greenery, some more nature conservation issues onto that site. Secondly, And this was something we used to do quite frequently when I was a local planning authority planning officer. With applications like this, we would sometimes put an informative, which in this case would say something like, in the light of the existing intended development of this site, it is likely that any further applications for further development are likely, not will be, as Councillor Spring had said, but are likely to be refused. We used to do that years ago. I don't know if we still do. I'm sure Mr. Charman can tell me. Thank you.
Councillor Rob has just indicated that we can do that informative on it. So, do you have a seconder for as he's proposed? Okay, Councillor Thompson, as you seconded, do you want to wish to speak now, or do you want to reserve your right?
I'll reserve right on seconding it, but I would like to make comments about the application.
Sorry, Councillor, are you seconding it, or yes? Okay, so but you want to reserve your right to speak. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as the ward councillors have stated, this site has become quite brutally institutional now. I mean, when you look at it, the original building is completely subsumed in like utilitarian extensions, and there's an awful lot of car parking. And I take on board the point about the screening from the road. However, immediately to the south, you've got the Bearsted Woodland Trust area and the falling land behind Sutton Street, where the stables are, down to the tributary of the Lilk stream. And it's beginning to become more and more intrusive there, particularly as the kind of natural wastage of the trees as they're gradually going, and there's no space to replace them. And coming onto the tree point, it was quite interesting when you go through the plans, in that there is no detailed planting plan. I mean, we've got a biodiversity net gain metric, but there's no detail behind it. I think the only reference to the planting that was described around how do we get around the BNG impact is that there's some triangles or kind of rectangles denoted on the plan, which is almost completely urban, which state proposed small urban trees. And I'm very aware that when you look at a biodiversity net gain metric, you look at the immediate history of the site to ensure that you are not having a site sterilised ahead of the BNG metric being carried out, and therefore coming quite low. So I'm a bit concerned about the loss of trees, and then our coming in with a metric with something which is really quite vague. And what is a proposed small urban tree anyway? Yeah, it sounds like something that's well behaved that they can fit in there, which won't like kind of grow fruit or leaves or get in the way. Therefore, I think we need to ensure more detail in terms of that landscape plan. And there's reference to bolstering hedgerows and so on, but there's nothing within any of the papers or the plans that shows how that will be doing. So I think we need to absolutely capture the fact that we want a mixed native hedge, where it's talking about the hedge strengthening and the mixed scrub. So it's native species such as hawthorn and spindle and so on are put into that. And then in terms of the small trees, you've got a really odd geology where it's really thirsty sand, which when the stream is in spate suddenly becomes very soggy. So it's kind of either one thing or the other. So therefore getting species that will actually grow is going to be quite tough. And what do grow and grow well in those areas are hawthorn, crabapple, and bird cherry will grow very well there. So I think we actually need to specify in terms of those small urban trees that they be crabapple, hawthorn cultivar of some sort, and bird cherry so that we know they'll actually grow in that habitat. So I think I'm happy with the motion for approval as is pointed out. And I agree that we will see further planning applications and they'll go up because there is no space expanding further. But that we give delegated powers to the officers to ensure that there is detail on the landscaping scheme. And the only other thing is that this is an intensification of the use. And there are certain kind of off-site impacts of the operation of this site. In the alleyway that goes alongside the building, which goes down to Sutton Street, there is always, I would almost call it medical waste. There's disposable blue gloves and there are masks lying down there on the footpath immediately outside. There again is that kind of disposable, obviously people coming off shift. Because it is an intensification, can we attach to this perhaps even an informative that they need to manage the waste arising from the operation of this site in the way that we would if we, if there's a chip shop and we say, you're not allowed to throw your rubbish around here. Well, this is a facility where people wear disposable masks and gloves and they get chucked around the building. So I know it's a bit of a left field one, but it is a significant intensification, and I would be interested to see if there is a potential device or way forward.
I think as an informative, that wouldn't be an issue. Are you happy, Councillor Spooner and Councillor Thompson, to take that?
Absolutely.
I'm just going to bring Mr. Jarman back and give a few comments that he wants to raise.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we can revise putative condition 4C to reflect, I think you said double staggered hedgerow with the standard specifications and the species mix that you mentioned. That's all fine.
Integrated habitats as well.
Yes, yeah. Just for information, as my colleague Mr. Ryan pointed out, with any BNG, the baseline is 2020, I think, either January or February. So they would have had to have complied with that.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. So I note my colleague's comments with interest and acknowledge that the representative of the applicant has already advanced proposals for addressing the BNG questions. I won't repeat any of that. I think that Councillor Springett put her finger on an important point, and if I may gently draw your attention to the remarks of my esteemed colleague opposite, we are not setting increase in care home places against the alternative value of BNG or otherwise. As Councillor Springett accurately observed, the careful design and placement of what we're describing as landscaping, BNG issues and so forth is actually in the interests of the business of the applicant. So in addition to all of the things that Councillor Harwood has pointed to, and I note with interest his drawing to officers to experiment with the extent to which we can persuade the applicant to make developments, if we could draw their attention to actually the benefit to the health of those who are being cared for at this establishment, so that we're not just seeking increase of BNG and natural benefit, but actually enhancing the amenity to those that are residents and the folk that are living there and being cared for, because it is in their interests too. I hope I've been clear enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. We can that last bit we can redo as an informative, if you're happy with that. Okay, Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. I'm by no means an expert on drainage, but what strikes me is that this site sits at the top of the hill. Just over the way is Bearsted Woodlands Trust, which is famous for its sandbank. And as Councillor Harwood said, the water drainage through the site ends up in a little stream, but it also ends up on the road. And if we go to the figure 1, you can see just where the border of the black line meets the road, that's Water Lane, and sort of like clues in the name, right? So in winter, that's a puddle that's probably shin deep after any sort of like, reasonable rainfall. It doesn't necessarily have to be big. And then also just outside Barty House to the right-hand side, there's another big congregation point there. So I would be interested, and obviously, we need care homes, we need care home places, but I'd be interested in some commentary on what conditions could be put on to make sure that the water outflow doesn't worsen. And actually, it's a good opportunity to try and improve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I'll ask the officers to come back on that. Is there anything we can do to improve the drainage? Could a soakaway be put in for that extension, for example?
If it's mains drainage, that's dealt with under section 106 of the Drainage Act. So people just pay to get a mains connection. If it's soakaway or a mixture, it'll be dealt with under building control if it's a soakaway.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Cox? Okay, thank you. Okay, any further speakers? No, in that case, we have a proposer, we have a seconder. I'm going to move to the vote. All those in favour? With the conditions and the informatives, shall I say as well? So, that is unanimous. Oh. Yeah, and that is approved. Thank you, councillors. Moving on then. Okay, I call upon your partner tonight, Sam. Sam, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. So the site is currently a residential property in Lewes, sustainably located within Maystone's urban boundary. Prevailing character of the street is residential. The existing building is C3 use, which is defined as residence for a family of up to 6 people, and the proposal is for C2 use, which would include the occupation by 2 resident carers and 4 children. Part of the assessment is whether there is a material change. There's case law which indicates that in some cases C3 may not need planning permission for a conversion to C2 on the basis that there is no or very limited impact material change in terms of activity, amenity or character. In respect to the character of the area, the proposal would function similarly to a regular residential dwelling. The type of activity would be a change in carers every 48 hours, school runs and extracurricular activity, which is not considered above and beyond what is already expected on the site. The site is within a sustainable location, so it is not considered that residents would be over-reliant on private vehicles. The site meets the parking standards for C3 use, and the parking situation has been assessed against C3 classification for 4+ bedroom houses at the edge of the urban area, as practically the building will operate similarly materially to C3. These parking standards are met, and it's not considered that the change would result in severe harm to highway or pedestrian safety. As already stated, the site would operate similarly as it does now. Movement, trip generation and activity would not be dissimilar to a C3 dwelling, so there will not be any adverse impacts upon neighbouring amenity. Overall, the proposal was considered acceptable subject to conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Luckhurst, as an objector, please. Thank you.
Good evening. Sorry. I'm here as a local resident and objector. I represent a large group of residents, all of whom have submitted objections to the application. The application would mean the property being used as a commercial business. This contravenes the Lewes neighbourhood plan. It is also not in keeping with the traditional residential nature of Lancet Lane, which has been enjoyed for more than 100 years. Granting this application would result in aggregated harm to Lancet Lane and set a dangerous precedent. A similar commercial application at Pennine Bower Lane, Lancet Lane, was recently refused. A number of the local residents are elderly, and the proposed use is intimidating and would substantially impact their right to the peaceful enjoyment of their properties and local amenities. The property is approximately 100 metres from the Lewes Primary School. Lancet Lane is heavily used by children aged 4 to 11 attending the school, many of whom walk directly past the property. This raises safeguarding issues given the nature of the young people to be housed at the property. The proposed use is therefore inappropriate due to the proximity of the local school. The property consists of 4 bedrooms, a very small kitchen, a dining room and lounge. There is a lack of viable sleeping arrangements for 6 individuals, insufficient segregated rooms for dining, recreation and social care activities, such as social worker and family visits. The management plan also indicates there will be a staff office, although none exists in the property. The property is inadequate to support the application, which has specialist demands far in excess of a single family unit of the same size. The management plan supporting the application is of poor quality, contains many inaccuracies and raises credibility concerns. For example, there is no rear access to the property, it is nowhere near to Barming Station, nor is there a local business park. The applicant has stated that the property is currently being let to 4 individuals and there is no issue of parking at the property. This is misleading as the current property only supports 1 car parking on the property, with the remaining vehicles parking on the road pavement outside, thus increasing the congestion for local residents and other users. In the past week, there have been reports of damage to 2 cars in an area which has previously had an extremely low occurrence of such events. The property setting is inappropriate for the proposed use. Its facilities are inadequate for the needs and safeguarding of the young people, and there is insufficient vehicle access and off-road parking. Given the reasons outlined, I respectfully request the application be declined.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Luckhurst. Could I have Councillor Andrews for the Lewes Parish Council?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Lewes Parish Council objects to this application for change of use of 29 Lancet Lane. Whilst the application proposes that the property will provide care accommodation, a care business will operate. We have read the management plan and the additional information provided in response to concerns that Lewes Parish Council and local residents expressed about the initial application. The justification is poor, prompts more questions than it answers, and contains errors. These are neither challenged or corrected in the committee report. It is considered that the parking provision is inadequate. The management plan puts forward proposals to mitigate. None are realistic and some are based on incorrect information. In fact, the management plan appears to be describing a completely different property. This does not inspire confidence in the proposals. To illustrate, the management plan states that opposite number 29, there is a nearby business park to provide overflow parking. There is no such business park. The plan claims that Barming Station offers public transport option 800 yards walk away. It's several miles away. The plan claims that there is parking provision for 2 vehicles to the rear of the property with access to the right of it. No such space or access exists. Further, we challenge a statement in section 608 of the committee report that there is space for 3 parked cars on the site and, as it states, also at least 1 space per resident staff and space for at least 1 visitor on site. This overstates the availing parking provision. If more than 1 vehicle were parked in front of the property, the limited room and curb access would necessitate vehicle shuffling, causing disturbance. In planning terms, local plan policy LPR SP 15 states development should respect the amenities of neighbouring properties. North Lewes Neighbourhood Plan Policy BCE1 states new business development will be supported where it would have an acceptable effect on residential amenity and any parking, highway and traffic considerations. Both policies were cited as a justification for a recent refusal of another change of use of application in Lancet Lane, namely 2350-4548 Pennine Bower, change of use from Class 3 to Residential Class 1, Education and Learning. We consider this creates a precedent. The Parish Council considered that locating the proposed business care business in a street of such residential character, as recognised by the Lewes Road Character Area Assessment, would be clearly inappropriate. It is noted that the committee report section 3 has not taken this document into consideration. Taking into account the requirements for planning policy, inadequate parking provision, and the flawed management plan, we respectfully request the Planning Committee refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, may I say that no one is against the idea of providing a home for young people with special needs, but we would argue this is neither the place nor the home for it. The plan which was submitted of the internals includes a lean-to which doesn't exist, a conservatory which is unusable, even if it's still there, which means that downstairs has 2 rooms. One of these rooms will be used by the care staff who are sleeping overnight or as office space, leaving 1 room for general use by the 4 young people who are living there. It may be described as a family, but find a family that has 4 young people with special needs and 2 parents or carers who change every 2 days. I don't suggest that is anything like a sort of family that could sustain itself. The internal is inappropriate for use. I'd be worried about safeguarding issues if one of the young people has to come downstairs during the night through or into a bedroom where 2 carers are sleeping. I don't think that's sustainable either. As to the parking issues, one of the vehicles that we park there pretty regularly will be a minibus used by the staff to ferry the young people about, leaving 1 space. They actually concede that some of these young people may be over 17. That could be at least another 2, 3 or 4 cars. Every 2 days, the 2 carers' cars will change over. That's even more traffic movements in the end of a road that is quite congested anyway, with traffic for the Lewes Primary School. It is a change of use from residential to commercial. It would set a precedent in a residential area. There is no doubt that this is a company who are running as a business and are seeking to make a profit from the situation they're in. We have had similar issues, or we have had issues of disturbance with a similar property elsewhere in the ward. It took us 4 months to get a reply from Kent County Council Social Services, who were unaware of any problems and have still not acted. So I don't believe there will be sufficient safeguarding for the young people who will need it. So I respectfully suggest that this is not a suitable place nor a suitable site for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I went and took a look at this site, and I have similar uses in my ward and indeed very close to where I live. And frankly, this is a more spacious site than the other sites that I am aware of in terms of its relationship with neighbours. I'm also very aware that the issues raised are not planning issues. They've got, you know, there are other bodies who need to look and resolve any of these things, but we are a regulatory planning committee. We can only look at the planning issues. And therefore I cannot see any recommendation other than that the officers have made that we can appropriately follow. So therefore, I would move as per the papers and take it from there. And if anyone has any potential amendments or whatever, we can look at it, but I couldn't even see any of them from my viewing the site. Thank you.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Okay, thank you. Do you want to speak now or give it every right?
Just to say a few words very good. I agree entirely with my colleague across the chamber. You know, we are a planning authority. I've forgotten how many times I keep mentioning that at committee meetings, but all we are concerned about is the land use and what is proposed. And you know, this is 2 adults and 4 children. You know, that is virtually the same as many other houses throughout the borough. I can understand the local residents' worries and their concerns, but you know, we are all part of a wonderful big community. We have to provide accommodation for all sorts of people, and young people in care need to be looked after, and they need to go somewhere. And I'm happy to support the recommendation as per the papers.
Okay, thank you, Aspen. I would just like to point out that we will have to change, amend condition 4. It does refer to the management plan that's been submitted, which I have read, and it is, as has been pointed out tonight, has some glaring holes in it. I know, I also know that I used to have one of these just at the road from me, and to truth, we didn't know, well, the house was there for about a year. To be honest, there weren't special needs children, so it was slightly different. I do have concerns, because obviously I have a child with special needs, and I have concerns over the amount of room. However, safeguarding isn't a planning issue, unfortunately. So even though socially we kind of want to say this doesn't meet the criteria, planning wise it does, unfortunately. And I was shocked when I looked at the square footage that you need for a residential childcare home. It's actually less than you need for a prison cell. So it is shocking, to tell you the truth, but it does conform with policy. I'd also actually want to say that we need an updated plan of the actual property as well to be submitted as well, because obviously the existing one, yeah, has got some glaring areas in it, like the lean-to being knocked down already. Okay, Councillor Cox, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I've just got 2 points. So first to say, in my voluntary work I do outside of council life, I'm actively looking to create employment opportunities for young adults with special educational needs, and we've had some great success of that, and it warms my heart every day when they come and work for us. So I'm very much in favour of these facilities. I think amenity has 2 meanings. One is amenity for the residents, but also amenity for the people who will live there. And I think, you know, if we can just pause a moment and make sure it is the right location. I can't see anything that says it is the wrong location. I'm thinking about the young individuals here in terms of its sort of transport links, etc. I just wanted to make a comment, though, that I think the paper's a bit thin. And we've heard from the residents talking about concern about whether there was incorrect information within the document, especially in relation to where the nearest railway station was, which made me chuckle because it's not even vaguely close. We just need to make sure that the information here is accurate, I think, before it goes forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I suppose what a positive is, this is probably within half a mile of 5 acre, which obviously is a special needs school. Does only cater to a certain age and a certain progress, but yeah, obviously we all know those issues. Okay, any other councillors? No. So we just need to go over the wording for the amendment, for the change for the conditions, but I'm quite happy. I'll just delegate that to officers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Condition 4.
Condition 4 and the layout, which is condition. That one. Yeah, condition 2. Okay. All right. All those in favour? All those against? Sorry, go that again. All those for? Councillor Perry, we're voting for it, or Okay, he does understand. Okay. Okay, those against? Those abstaining? Okay, so that is approved with the conditions amended. Thank you, councillors. I'll just give 5 minutes for, I know there's a few residents that are here for this to leave if they want to. Okay. So if we can move on. Item 20. I call upon the officer to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The application site is in the defined settlement boundary of Staplehurst. As such, it is in a sustainable location for housing development. Boardwalk currently consists of 3 terraces, 2 terraces of 4 houses, numbers 1 to 7, and numbers 2 to 8, and 1 terrace of 5 houses. The proposal is for a new 2-story end of terrace dwelling on garden land to the side of the existing dwelling at 1 Boardwalk. The land to the front and rear of the 2 dwellings will be subdivided to provide external amenity space and off-street parking and a biodiversity enhancement area. In assessing the impact of the development on the character and appearance of the area, the development was found to be in keeping with the scale, height, and design, and fits into the existing fabric of development at Boardwalk. The proposal would not be harmful to residential amenity, and the dwelling would provide a good standard of accommodation for its future occupants. Although it would fall below the internal space standards, the building footprint would replicate the form and size of neighboring properties, which is considered more important. Concerns were raised on parking and highway safety from local representation. However, the proposal would not include any new parking spaces, and a new access is not proposed. The recommendation is to grant planning permission. There is an urgent update to amend the recommendation. That is to grant planning permission subject to conditions and the prior completion of a legal agreement to secure heads of terms. The heads of terms is to secure BNG for 30 years. BNG hierarchy has been considered and the approach is reasonable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now have Councillor Sharp, Staplehurst Parish Council. Sorry, Councillor Reid, do you need to vacate? Our next one, sorry. Staplehurst is popular tonight.
There we go. It's a different machine. Thank you. Staplehurst Parish Council recommended refusal for this application. We are disappointed that it is felt that the application would not be harmful to residential amenity, given that it is so close to the primary school. The area around the school is a constant battle for parking and safety, not just at drop-off and collection times due to activities at the school, but there are also commercial lorries delivering, as well as the postman collecting from the post box every day, twice. The proposed drive comes out right at the area where there are cars almost constantly coming and going and parking in that area. KCC vehicle standards say the ideal is a side-by-side, not tandem parking, which is what is proposed here and is likely to lead to further on-street parking. The Parish Council, Police and Parking Enforcement with the school only last month endeavoured to try and calm this dangerous area due to the high volume of traffic. We spent the whole week there, Policy DM23, now LPR2RA4, requires a safe and accessible parking, and we certainly do not agree with the statement that this is acceptable in terms of highway safety and planning. There may be off-road parking on the site, but it takes no account of the access issues. It tramples on the recommendation of our neighbourhood plan, PW2, that new developments will respect the scale of existing properties. We consider this to be an over-intensification of the area and that the proposed development causes a lack of privacy and open space for the existing and potential new residents. Plonking one extra house into a minimal space is not in the spirit of any of the design guides that recommend developments take due regard for space privacy and quality of life. You've mentioned that it's 60 square metres, which is below the standard of 70, which is in your LPR QD6. It's advertised as a bed and study, but it's probably going to be called a 2-bed. Our PW4 also seeks to limit green space loss, which this development will build over. And given that this is a back garden development and that MBC seem minded to approve this application, much to our disappointment, we do support the request for an ecological impact assessment, as no information seemed to be in the application. Sadly, the existing biodiversity of plants and shrubs have steadily disappeared, including the weeping willow that was on the corner there, which was a very welcome feature, whether it was too sunny or too wet. I speak from experience. Given the biodiversity target covers 30 years, we do wonder who's going to monitor and enforce that, as it's a small residential garden. We respectfully request you consider these points and refuse the application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Perry as a ward member.
Thank you, Chairman.
Geez, Councillor Perry, I've actually forgotten the applicant, to tell you the truth.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, so
Apologies,
hold on.
Councillor Perry. The middle button with the speech.
Thank you, Chairman. It is understood that the application before you has been called into Planning Applications Committee by the Parish Council, who recommend refusal, mainly due to potential conflict of the development with the school drop-off and pick-up zone. We don't consider this to be a fully justified objection. No amendment is to be made to the access point, and the arrangement of driveways and parking spaces would not be materially different to the current situation. The only difference would be the addition of one parking space where the current garage is sited. The only potential disruption to the school arrangement might be during construction phase. This could be dealt with via a condition requiring the submission of a construction management plan, perhaps in consultation with the Parish Council, should members consider this necessary. To the contrary, we consider the location to be a positive. If future occupants have school-aged children, they won't need to use cars to go to school, nor would they need to use vehicles to visit the doctor's surgery or the local parade of shops. We stress that with regards to parking in and of itself, this is a policy compliance scheme. The Maidstone local plan cites KCC's guidance, which states only one parking space is required for a dwelling of this size in this location. The scheme exceeds this regardless of the tandem arrangement. Therefore, there's no substantive basis to refuse the application based on the lack of parking provision. We note other objections on the general capacity of local infrastructure. Staplehurst is defined as a rural service centre in the local plan where development is to be directed. This is due to the range of facilities and services it can offer. The scheme is therefore policy compliant in this regard. This is a modestly sized dwelling house in a sustainable location. Such properties are in incredibly high demand as they readily lend themselves to first-time buyers and young families. There's a national drive for such house building presently, and developments such as this in the urban area ultimately reduce pressure on undeveloped greenfield land. We also note comments regarding layout and design, where objectors consider the proposal visually dominating. We contest this. The character of the area is defined by terraced housing, and this proposal would not exceed the established building line of the properties to the west on Gibbon Rise. The application site is within an area of private amenity space, which would normally be blocked from view with boundary treatments. Therefore, the openness of the area does not contribute to visual amenity of the public realm and the street scene. In summary, this is a sustainable development where there is no justified ground for refusal. We therefore respectfully request that planning permission be granted in line with the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is quite a hefty update as well that's been provided by the officer. The detail about the KCC ecology request to go with it. I'd also like to highlight, when it comes to the housing increase, we do now have to consider the 5-year land supply, which we don't have. Okay, so that is a material consideration to also take. Okay, so Councillor Perry as a ward member, and then Councillor Riddon.
Thank you, Chairman and members. This is quite a difficult one because I'm a parish councillor. I don't sit on the planning committee, and I read this quite cold. I didn't even know the application was coming through. When I read it, I thought that the officer's report was extremely good. Actually, I think they nailed all the key issues. And I have to say, and I do this with enormous respect, but I don't agree with the points made by the parish council on this particular issue. And the reason is the parking issues at the school are right to raise. I fully understand that. It is chaotic, but I don't think that's for this committee or the planning. I don't think that it is a planning issue. The proposal itself seems to be perfectly in line with Bower Walk and the type of houses we've got in that area. So I think there's no particular issue there. It is extremely sustainable because it's a short walk to the bus stop, and maybe the infamous number 5 bus does turn up from time to time, and it's a very good, it is a very sustainable position to be in. So all in all, I just don't think it doesn't overwhelm the street scene. I think it's pretty well in line with the street scene, in my view. I know the area very well. I walk past this area quite frequently. I actually think the officer has got this one right, and I do say I have a lot of respect for the parish council, but I think on this one I have to say I do disagree with them on their conclusions. Certainly, from my personal point of view, I'm interested to hear what other people say, but I'm personally, I can't see any planning reasons to object to this. I also think having additional property in a sustainable area is something we do, as you rightly said, Chairman, we do need to consider, and it would provide a home for a family, and I think that's something that's also very important. I don't think it spoils the area or gives us any problems in that respect. So I personally am in favour of it, but I'm happy to listen to what everybody else says. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riddon. Councillor Perry. Councillor Riddon.
Thank you, Chair. I fully agree with my colleague, Councillor Perry. I'm sure my colleagues know this is right in the centre of Staplehurst.
Councillor Perry, can you turn your microphone off, please?
Oh, sorry.
It's a very sustainable location. It's very close to the community field. It's right next to the school. It's very close to the library. It's close to the medical centre. It's close to shops, close to bus route. It does tie in very neatly with the existing buildings. So I support the officer's recommendation, and after hearing from my colleagues, I'd be happy to recommend approval.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Nagy. Do you want to speak now, or?
I'll just be very brief. I mean, looking at the plans, I quite like the layout of this, especially as we're developing, and we can't always develop massive housing areas. Being able to put 1 or 2 houses into an area where there are amenities and facilities that can support it is a good idea, especially in areas where it can be managed. I do agree with the resident naturally, because of how sensitive the area is, the building process should have some sort of management plan with it to accommodate the stress of the area, the road during pickup, and make sure that's not implemented. But other than that, it looks like a good design. Everything's been accommodated for, and as our fellow councillors have suggested, it will be good for the area. So I'm all in favour for it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Just to clarify, obviously, sorry, Councillor Reardon, you said you'd be happy once you've listened to a few councillors propose it, and I asked for a seconder. Are you still happy just to propose it?
Yes, I am.
Could I then ask, obviously, seeing the applicant has offered about doing the construction management plan, that we add that condition? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, is that accepted? Okay. Councillor Harwood and Councillor Cox and Councillor Summersgill.
Thank you, Chairman. I've no issues with the principle of development here, but again, it's quite a sensitive site at the end of the cul-de-sac on the bend. So as you look into it, and the boundary treatments are going to be quite important. Once again, like the previous application, I couldn't find a landscaping scheme. There's some kind of illustrated landscaping on the block plan, and the biodiversity net gain management plan references some tree species and so on. However, on the block plan, it shows a hedge. Well, I think it's a hedge, kind of green thing around the boundary. I think we do need to tie down that we actually get that kind of that right angle of hedgerow fronting onto Gibbon Rise to make sure that it is a decent traditional boundary. And then in terms of the tree species, which they're not detailed in a landscaping scheme, but they're just in the biodiversity net gain management plan. There are 6 trees proposed, and 4 of those will work very well. There's pear tree, that's good. Hawthorn, that's good. Hazel, that's good. But there's 2 times rowan that's shown, and rowan like dry sandy soil, not weald and clay. So what we could do is just substitute that for wild service. So we're substituting Sorbus orchiparia for Sorbus terminalis. So it's very closely related, but one loves clay and doesn't die. How about, yeah, and with that, a couple of small tweaks, I'd be kind of indebted if colleagues took them on board.
Okay, so proposer and seconder willing to accept that? Okay. Okay, Councillor Cox and Summersgill.
I think when you look at this development, it reminds me a lot of a very similar one that's on the corner of Castle Road and Hildeborough Crescent in Allington, which has been done really successfully. You can almost carbon copy, take the development, take the style of housing, its situation near a school, near a library, near shops, you know, everything that we've said. And it's been done really successfully. So I'm very supportive, but I just wanted to assure the parish council it can be done well. And that might be a good reference point on the management plan.
Yes, I just wanted to check the mention of a large willow tree by one of the residents. Looking on Google Earth, there is in fact a substantial tree in the land there, which doesn't appear on the photograph on page 118. So if that, I don't know what age the Google Earth is, but if we are to take the December 2019 baseline for biodiversity net gain, I would hope that that was included within the assessment, and just for them to note in checking the ecology.
So is that from Google Maps or Street View? Because Street View is 2009, Google Maps. Okay. That's Google Maps, not Google Street View. So could you also come back about was the tree considered within the BNG?
Yeah, as you can see in the image, this was taken when I visited the site, and there is no tree currently.
No, but obviously with the B&G, we take from 2020.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, that's right.
so what I'm asking, as the applicant, sorry, West, one of the objectors has said, there used to be a weeping willow or in that garden that has been removed. When was that removed? And was that considered for being in the B&G calculations?
We will have to check that. We will have to check if that was included in the metric.
Sorry, Councillor, have you got a date on the thing? 'Cause obviously that does matter and does impact on it. Yeah, but there should be a date of when actually the picture was taken. While that's being discussed, Councillor Harwood, you want to come back in?
So it's on this general point, and it's not specifically related to this, but both on the Hillbeck application, where the oak tree was lost within the last 5 years, and this one where the willow has come down, we think within the last 5 years, not entirely sure that they were acknowledged within the calculation. So if that's 2 on one papers for one night, are we as a policy making sure that we do check to see how much the site has changed, just so that we can validate those B&G calculations that are coming in, because that's why that time lag was incorporated by government.
Yeah. Well, first of all, on this one, rather than Councillor Summersgill sort of like looking at his mobile phone for any longer, I think we should defer this one just to specifically research this issue. But no, I wouldn't say 100% that planning officers go back on the history. However, B&G, the matrix is one thing, but as part of the application forms, the applicant or the agent has to sign a statutory declaration that what they've done is the truth, basically. And there is obviously a limit to how much planning gets into querying legal declarations, unless it's quite obvious and somebody like tonight has raised this point, in this case Councillor Summersgill.
So can you also confirm that it has been considered or not been considered?
The B&G assessment shows the baseline as having one tree within the site, but it seems we don't know whether that's the tree that's being talked about. We don't know whether the tree that's being talked about is actually in the site, so we need to investigate it.
If I may come back on that, the tree that's talked about in the report is the apple tree with the ivy growing, the apple stump with the ivy growing in the middle of the garden. It's not the tree that was at the site boundary, which I think Councillor Summersgill was talking about.
Okay, so to save any further debate, I'm just going to propose that we defer it, and then we get the B&G stuff sorted out. Yeah. Okay, so do you have a seconder for that? Okay, right, all in favour of deferral? Okay, that's 10-4. Those against? Against. Okay, that is deferred. Okay. Yeah, okay, so as that was an amendment, we now have to vote again for deferral again. Yes, okay, so all in favour of deferral? So that's 10-4, those against? And 1 against. Okay, that's deferred. Okay, do councillors want a quick 5-minute break? Guys, it's been quite hot tonight and move around a little bit, or are we happy to continue? All right, happy to continue onwards and upwards then? Okay. You have another one. I could have on.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chairman.
Reed, you leave the building, or the room at least.
This application site is in the defined settlement boundary of Staplehurst, and it's in a sustainable location for housing development. The application proposes front and side 2-story extensions to the existing previously extended dwelling. The floor space created by the existing and proposed building extensions will then form a new 2-story 2-bedroom dwelling. In assessing the impact of the development on the character and appearance of the area, the change from a semi-detached pair to a small 3-property terrace would not appear out of place. Existing front elevation of 5860 Bathurst Road is asymmetric. This would minimize the visual impact caused by the irregular form of development. The proposal would also reduce the existing hard standing to the rear of the property, which is seen as a benefit. There is no strong character or common building line on Surrendon Road. There are several other properties like the one proposed, including the properties at 3438 Gibbon Rise. The proposal would not be harmful to residential amenity, and the dwelling would provide a good standard of accommodation for its future occupants. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions. There's an urgent update on this application with amendments to condition 14 and response to a local representation that was recently received from a neighbor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I call on Mr. Metcalfe, objector.
Okay. Right. I'm Mike Metcalfe. I am husband of one of the co-owners of 2 Surrendon Road, which is next door to 60 Bathurst, speaking on their joint behalves. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I rise as a concerned but thoroughly reasonable relative of a resident of Staplehurst, someone who still believes that planning law is more than just a box-ticking exercise, and the character and community ought to count for something in these decisions. Let me be candid, this application, while superficially modest, is in fact a Trojan horse for creeping suburban overdevelopment, and its approval would conflict with multiple statutory and policy provisions, some of which I will now set out. First, the Staplehurst Neighbourhood Plan, adopted and therefore part of the Statutory Development Plan under Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, is materially relevant. Specifically, policy PW2 demands that new development must respect the scale and grain of existing properties. Another dwelling shoehorned into the garden of 60 Bathurst Road does not respect the local vernacular, it disrespects it, essentially turning this into a terrace. Policy PW4 seeks to promote sustainability and limit green space loss. This application manages to fail both aims with remarkable efficiency. Policy CM1 calls for a mix of housing to reflect local need. A speculative backland dwelling of uncertain utility scarcely meets this test. It's an extension onto an existing extension, creating a terraced effect, as previously mentioned. Secondly, under policy DM1, now LPR SP15 of the Maidstone Borough Local Plan 2017, development must integrate positively with its surroundings. This application instead represents, if I may say so, a textbook example of what the courts have called incongruous insertion, a planning euphemism for it just doesn't fit. Now, I'm all for innovation, but policy DM23, now LPR TRA4 of the same plan, requires safe and accessible parking and turning areas. Here, access arrangements are marginal at best, and I doubt even the most determined Amazon driver or, heaven forbid, fire engine or ambulance would navigate there with confidence. Fire on the site does have recent precedent. The application also fails to align with the National Planning Policy Framework, particularly paragraphs 130 and 134, which mandate developments to be visually attractive and sympathetic to local character. With respect, this is afterthought infill rather than contextual complement. Paragraph 12, which reiterates that planning decisions must be plan-led. If this proposal is considered acceptable, one wonders what purpose the neighbourhood plan actually serves. Maybe it make a good doorstop. Furthermore, the officer's report gives insufficient regard to cumulative impact, a factor recognised in both case law and policy. If this application is approved, others will surely follow, and Bathurst Road risks becoming a patchwork of piecemeal intensification.
So can I ask you to wrap up? You've had your 3 minutes.
Okay, I've got one paragraph. Okay, so the Kent Design Guide, often ignored, is still relevant. So residents are not anti-housing, they're anti-squeeze it in and hope for the best. In conclusion, the application is contrary to the Staplehurst Neighbourhood Plan, Maidstone Local Planning Policies, LPR SP15 and LPR TRA4, and the NPPF, and effectively the very spirit of coherent community-led planning. Thank you for your time. I got as much in as I could.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, Councillor Ash, the Staplehurst Parish Council.
Good evening. The application is against NBC local plan policies in the local plan and residential extension planning document, as well as the principles of good design and standard stated in our neighbourhood plan. LPR HOU2, this is clearly an extension on an existing extension and therefore must surely be overdevelopment and not subservient to the original property. The scale of the existing extension is not small, a 2-storey side extension, single-storey rear extension and single-storey front extension, and this will make it bigger. Similar sites in the village were designed in the 60s to give a feeling of spaciousness, but now it seems every such site is viewed as a money-making opportunity to squeeze another house in. Don't we value the openness and amenity value anymore? As such, it's against policy LPRS 15 of good design, as it will cause a loss of light and overshadowing neighbour properties, as well as the existing property. It goes against policy NBC residential extensions, that developments should fit unobtrusively into the area. We consider this to be an over-intensification of the area and that the proposed development causes a lack of privacy and open space for the existing and potential new residents. An additional house into minimal space is not the spirit of any design guides that recommend development take due regard of space, privacy and quality of life. Also, PW4 in our neighbourhood plan seeks to limit green space loss, which this development will build over. It's also against LPRH OU4 residential garden land, as there will be a significant reduction in garden space. As well as taking up more garden space, there is some additional biodiversity added. However, having a predator-proof hedgehog house in the back garden is great, but would, depending on the type of fencing used, be enclosed in the garden. The proposed new dwelling is using the existing driveway for off-road parking spaces, but will require a widened vehicular access to Surrendon Road with a loss of hedge right on the junction of that road. The area around the local primary school is a constant battle for parking and safety issues, and not just drop-off and collection times. The existing dwelling will rely on 2 new off-road parking spaces, resulting in a complete loss of the front garden and new vehicle access onto Bathurst Road, which is also a busy and well-used road. For these reasons, the residents of the existing house would have a loss of space, privacy and open space. Finally, there is no mention of sustainable energy with either air source heat pumps or solar. Therefore, we respectively request you consider these points and refuse the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Perry.
Yes. Where shall I start? It seems to be an evening for me to disagree with my parish council, but on this one, I'm afraid I do again. I can't accept some of the comments that are made, particularly about the street scene and how it fits in with the local amenities and area. I think actually the proposal is actually improves the area rather than actually goes the other way. But it's very much in line with the sort of developments we got in Bathurst Road, particularly, and in Surrendon. So I can't see really any planning reasons why this should be objected to. I don't want to go on too much on this because I think the office has written a very clear report on this and I think has tackled all the issues that have been raised, and I think they've been tackled very clearly in the report. So I have no issues with this. I think actually it's quite a reasonable proposal, and I'm not quite sure really why it's been refused by the parish council. Reasons have been given, but I don't really understand them, quite frankly. I don't think they're justified, and it's certainly not justified on planning reasons. And I think that's where we sit here in this committee. So again, I'm happy to accept the officer's recommendation, but again, I'm pleased and happy to listen to what colleagues on the committee would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Just because it is brought up about the solar panels, heat pumps, so the sustainability, is that covered?
Yes, as a renewables condition that has been attached.
I'd also like to bring members, there is an urgent update to go with this as well, where some of the conditions have been amended slightly because there was some wording issues. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? No? Okay. Councillor Harwood, almost.
Yeah. I mean, I understand some of the points that are made, and I'm looking through by the parish council, looking through the conditions, and I think actually it's quite an old application, and it was when we just referred to drawing plans, and that actually picked up a lot of the issues. The one issue that I can't see, which is in our residential extensions SPD, is anything about the integral niches for biodiversity. I can neither see that as a standalone condition or indeed on a plan.
Right, Councillor, I'm not like at the chairman's brief, and I said we better put it in, otherwise you'll pick this up.
Yeah. So can I give, if we're just proceeding with this, can there be delegated powers to officers just to check the drawing numbers and whatever and just make sure it has got something?
I propose from the chair that we go per the papers, but the amendment that we do a condition that there is integral habitats. Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah. Okay. So I propose it. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Do you want to come back, Councillor Perry, or? Okay. In that case, we'll move straight to the vote. All in favour? Those against? Abstaining? That's 9 for, 1 abstaining. That is approved with the amended condition. Okay. Does someone want to call Councillor Reardon back, please? Okay. I've just been asked about having a quick personal break. So we'll take a quick personal break. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yes, yeah. Have you seen the so-called nature reserve area behind the flats where the tennis courts used to be? Whether they've repaired the pond or anything. I haven't been down there for a while, but the last time I did look, it was still pretty crap.
Yeah, it's worse, if anything. I've been meaning to something like
Okay, councillors and officers, can you please take your seats? Okay, councillor Thompson. Okay, I call upon Sean Scott to introduce the report, please. Item 22.
Thank you, Chair. This item relates to an application for a minor material amendment at Holman House on Station Road in Staplehurst. The amendments relate to the planning permission granted in December 2020 for the erection of single-storey side extension, part single-storey, part two-storey rear extension, new upper floor together with external alterations and a change of use of commercial to residential to form 10 residential units. The application relates to changes to windows on the northern and eastern elevations as set out in the report, and I'll run through these within the presentation. I also highlight at this stage that there's an urgent update which is for it notes a discrepancy identified on the northern elevation in relation to the design of the fan lights within two dormer windows. To address this, it is proposed to obtain an amended drawing under delegated authority. I will set out the changes as well later in the slides. So this image relates to an amendment of the second floor rear window, which has been changed back to that as originally proposed. I went on site and I considered that there was some harm to overlooking, so it has reverted to that as originally approved. This image relates to the rear windows on the first floor and shows the window as built and now proposed with fixed panes except for the high level fan lights. So again, I've been out on site, and to ensure that there is no harm to overlooking, we reverted to only having fan lights, high level fan lights, and fixed panes below. This is the side northern elevation, and this is as built and proposed. So for this additional roof light, which serves a study. And this image shows, well, these photos show, I should say, amendments to the dormer windows. And you've got a frosted glass fixed pane here with roof lights above, which matches the arrangement of having the high level fan lights to that as existing. The discrepancy I refer to for the urgent update relates to the arrangement of these fan lights. As you can see here, the approved drawing shows a single fan light and the proposed shows 2 fan lights. So that concludes the application. Back to you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Sharp.
I know where the button is now. Okay, Staplehurst Parish Council continue to support the existing neighbours' right to privacy, and we've been disappointed at the developer's approach to simply ignore approved plans and build their version. We are therefore glad to see that this has been brought to the committee. The developer has on 2 previous occasions applied for minor material amendments, both of which were declined, and this is yet another example of what could be described as disingenuous use of the planning process, as privacy for the neighbours to the north has been from the outset and remains an issue. We have been supportive of MBC conditions made in order to try and ameliorate the situation. Amendment A relating to the Juliet balcony. These were meant to be windows and it is now therefore a larger glazed area than originally agreed. We do, however, welcome the non-openal aspect below 1.7, as this does prevent the potential of a door onto a flat roof access. But we question its non-obscured glazing, so the lack of privacy for neighbours remains. Amendment B, the roof light. This seems rather incongruous and out of keeping with this additional window. And I have to say, aesthetically, it's really not pleasing. It just seems to have been plonked in. Anyway, Amendment C, the north elevation, the proposed fan light, I'm not sure about because that's new to what I was looking at. But this does seem more congruent to have the one large window rather than small ones. But we assume that a condition for obscured glass in line with the other window would be put in place to ensure any future owner complies with that to safeguard the neighbours in the future. I think everyone would agree that this development has been a frustrating experience for us all and seems a shame that the developers could not have worked more with both MBC, SPC and the existing residents. I'm hoping that this will be the end of the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Mr. White for the applicant.
Good evening. I'll keep this short and sweet. As the applicant, we feel that the simple material amendments we've made is going to enhance the look of the building and also get a better experience for the new residents of the building with not incurring any privacy issues with the existing neighbours. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We'll go to the ward members. Councillor Rudden, I'll go to you this time.
that better? Yes. Thank you. Yeah, just to repeat, this planning application went through a lot of investigation when it originally came through. However, I don't see any issues with these minor amendments. So I'm supportive of the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, I'm glad that I sit here and now at last in line a little bit with the parish council, and I'm not totally disagreeing, but I think the points made by Councillor Sharp were very, very valid. I actually wish this whole thing had never started in the first place, but that's going back a few years. These are, as it said, they're not material amendments. I think they follow what we've been requesting. The privacy issue of neighbours is still very, very important and has been right from the start of this, and does need to be protected, because I think it's been one of the key issues all along. But I think these are I agree with the officer's proposals. I think that we're not in a position to refuse this, and hopefully, as Councillor Sharp said, this may be bringing this whole affair to a conclusion. I hope so. Thank you.
John, do you want to come back on it?
Chair, I just wanted to pick up on the point raised by the parish councillor, and to ensure that we have delegated powers for condition 3 to just make an amendment to ensure that the amended plan also picks up on the amenity matter with the neighbour.
Thank you. Councillor Cox. No, Councillor Summergill.
First point is, you said there was an urgent update, but I haven't got one on this.
Verbal urgent update.
Sorry?
Verbal
urgent. Thank you very much. I'm just confused, having seen, maybe I'm taking the wrong view, but having seen the pictures taken of the windows currently in place, is this not a retrospective application for section 73?
I think if we, I've been off the back, but being Councillor Perry and Councillor Spooner were on the planning committee, and obviously Councillor Harwood, when this went through the first time. So this is going back, these amendments went back to what we kind of originally kind of wanted in the first place, and some minor amendments with the privacy. So, but I'll let the officer come back in.
That's correct. Not all of because I've negotiated changes to the drawings to change back to the original application as well, and to be more in line with the original application. Those aren't fully retrospective. The applicant will need to address those.
Thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Got it. Yeah, I just wanted to raise one thing, because it's not 100%, it's not totally relevant to what we're discussing tonight, but it's part of the whole issue and concerns I've had with this whole project. Because what you say on page 146 is, and it's raised by residents, concerns raised about the diameter of a sewage pipe connecting the public sewer, and so this is a major issue in Staplehurst. We've had it in the Marden Road, and some of us remember when we had the Dickens Gate development there, that we raised concerns there. And I noticed that the officer's response, which is perfectly fair, says that basically it's not a planning issue. Except that it's basically the water authorities. Then when I turn over the page, and I see the two most dreaded words in the English language, Southern Water. So, you know, I just want to say that this whole development was caused us problems from the start, and I'm worried that it will continue to cause us problems if this issue is not properly resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. As I'm here, no one talk against it. I'm quite happy to move as per the papers with the urgent update and the delegated powers for condition 3. Yeah. Yeah, and there's an update. Okay, do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ridden. Right, all in favour? Okay, that's approved. Okay, moving on then. Item 16, Riverside House, West Street, Hutton. I call upon Sam Cowdy to introduce the report. Oh, and you're vacating, are you? Sorry. Just wait for Councillor Summersgill to leave the chamber.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the change of use from agricultural to residential garden land and erection of an outbuilding slash garden room incidental to the enjoyment of Riverside House, located to the northwest of the plot, delineated in red. The building is currently partially erected. The proposed area of the plot to be converted is approximately 135 square metres. The site is located to the west of a formal access to a holiday let to the northeast. The site is screened from the street scene by dense and tall existing hedging. The proposed building is approximately 5 by 7 metres with height of approximately 5 metres. It possesses a hipped roof of similar form to surrounding buildings. The size of the building is not considered to be dominating nor obtrusive, but modest in scale and suitable for a rural location. Existing screening will be retained fronting the street, and further landscaping will be secured to the north and east boundaries with post and rail fencing. The proposed building appears taller, but this better imitates the surrounding design and is preferable to a flat roof. The proposed plot is small and located on the inside of the access, where it has a better relationship with the dwelling than the surrounding agricultural land. It does not encroach drastically and would not significantly harm the agricultural economy through loss of best and most versatile land. Impact upon other considerations is considered limited. However, it should be noted that a specifically worded condition has been added to prevent use as a separate accommodation, which has been updated as an urgent update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Heaton.
Thank you. Hunton Parish Council objects to this application on 2 grounds. Firstly, that contrary to the Planning Officer's recommendation, Hunton PC believes that the siting of the summer house is contrary to policy LPR ENV2. This land is grade 2 agricultural land, the second highest designation, and as such, the plot should not have its designation changed to residential use, however small the plot. In the past, Hunton Parish Council has recommended refusal on a number of applications of a similar nature, to which MBC has agreed. We see no good reason why this should not be any different. For instance, there is plenty of room in the existing garden if they want to build a summer house. Hunton Parish Council is also unclear as to why the plans in the application bear little resemblance to the existing building for which this retrospective application is being made. It is a different height and a different construction from the plan, for example. I also wish to ask why in the committee report there is no mention of previous enforcement issues on this site. We therefore ask the committee to reject this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. actually have a ward member there, do we? Yes. Oh, so, okay. Anyone wish to speak on this item? Councillor Cox.
Just one question. On relevant planning history, we say there is none. And I obviously observe the word relevant, but I spot 10 different applications between 2018 and 2025. And I'm curious why, well, is it real that none of those are relevant? Thank you.
Okay. Can you come back on that one, please, Sam?
Yeah, I think two of them referred to the conversion of the holiday let, but we didn't consider any of them to be directly relevant to the conversion of that particular plot of land.
Anybody else? I just to hide the same concerns as Huntingdon Parish Council at the beginning. The actual field, there is a road that goes a driveway that comes through around the back of that, isn't there? Of the actual summer house. So it does cut that field in to a little bit, T-Drew. So I know what the councillor is saying about losing the farmland, but at the same time, I couldn't envision that being used as farmland due to the access road. But that's just my opinion. I'm just laying it out there. So, does anyone else wish to speak on it? Councillor Carwood.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a stuck record, but there's a biodiversity net gain plan attached to this, and it's so vague, and there is no landscaping scheme. All I can find is, we're going to get our 10% biodiversity net gain because we're going to plant 2 small trees. 10 because it's not a residential, so therefore it's national. But I'm struggling a bit with the whole metric and how it's working, and how, you know, I would have thought we had to consider assimilating this landscape into the domestic, and therefore we'd be looking at, you know, a hedgerow along the boundary edge along the road or something, not we vaguely will put 2 trees in the site. So I have no in principle problem with this very small site changing over. But I do have a problem with the way that we are addressing the B&G issue. I think, you know, it needs to be more specific and more.
As a condition, are you suggesting that we put to go to the B&G, a landscape management plan with a double stacked hedge along the rear access road to enclose the curtilage of the garden?
Yes, and deliver a genuine biodiversity net gain. Yeah.
That'd be acceptable, Sam?
With regards to the landscaping, we do you just want more specificity in terms of species mix, etc.?
Yeah, it was just a native hedgerow mix, just native species in a double staggered row along the access track, and then we lock it in for a long period because of the B&G plan, and I think that would tackle both the landscape and the biodiversity challenges.
There is a landscaping scheme for a native double staggered hedgerow to the northeast and southeast boundaries of the smaller plot that's being proposed for. Would you like inclusion of along the access as well?
I think that's the point for the enclosure, because in the northeast that's the garden, whereas this is the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're aware it's not within the red boundary, but it probably is within the blue boundary. Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's in the blue land, so it's important. Yeah, it's conditionable, isn't it? Okay. Councillor Cox.
As usual, I'm going to be greedy with 2 points if I may. I'm just interested in any commentary on page 73, the Hunton Parish Council comment that the drawings do not reflect the building currently on site. It'd be good to hear about that. And then my second point is, under the conditions, we talk, let me find it. We talk about landscaping, but I can't see any mention of lighting, and given its proximity to, I think it's the river belt or a reservoir, whichever it is, we talk a lot about the need to protect those areas to make sure we don't get sort of light flooding and damage to small beings. So it'd be good to hear what the conditions are for that, please.
Condition 5 requires additional details to be received post permission for any external lighting proposed on site. And with regards to the difference between the plans and what's on site is only partially complete, so they still need to put a roof on it essentially.
Okay, everyone happy? Okay, so I'm going to propose as per the papers with the amendment to the double stacked hedge along the track road in the blue area, in the blue boundary. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also been brought to my attention that conditions 5 and 6 refer to condition 4, where they should be referring to the site development scheme on condition 3. So I'd need to adjust that as well.
Okay, so I propose delegated powers to sort it out. Okay, so second, are you happy for that? Yeah. Okay, all in favour? Unanimous. Okay, approved with the added conditions. Okay. It is a start item. So I'm not going to discuss it because it's just had to come back because no. If anyone wants to introduce, I'm going to move from the chair that we take it to the start item. Do you have a seconder for that? Okay, Kath Harwood. All in favour? Oh, unanimous. Okay. Oh. I abstain. 4, abstain, against. Okay. Sorry.
Can we do it again, please?
Yeah.
Seem to be going round in
Sorry, because okay, we're start again. Isn't it? Yeah. No, I'll start the 4s. 4 for approval. Okay. Okay. Hands down. Those against? Abstain? Thank you. Okay, so that's 10-4, 1 against? No, abstain. 10-4, 1 abstain. That is approved. I've been asked to say the numbers by Anna Smith. She's on the webcast.
Thanks.
That is the same for the next one. So, item 18. Have to take this up.
You wanted me to amend one of the conditions for this one at the members briefing, if you recall. Do you still want me to do that? The bat tubes, remove the bat tubes from the.
Do you want it introduced? Yeah, there you go.
Okay, yeah.
Have the item introduced? Okay, so item 18. I'll move to introduce.
I'd just like to request delegated authority to amend condition 8 to change to remove the reference of bat tubes from that condition and have bat bricks only. So this application tonight is along Redwall Lane in Linton and seeks the part demolition of an agricultural building and in the part reconstruction in order to create 2 new dwellings. So the site is in the countryside and the application follows a recent prior approval to convert the building into 3 dwellings. So this is the application building. So the restrictions of Class Q allow agricultural buildings to be converted with a minimum of harm, fully retaining their agricultural character. So recently we had been resisting this type of development to discourage applicants from securing Class Q applications and then coming in and building something completely different. But however, recently we've had recent appeal decisions where the Class Q application has been accepted as the fallback position, and that's been given some weight. We've previously accepted that the building is capable of conversion under Class Q applications. So, however, the proposal is not considered to be a conversion by virtue of the loss of much of the building, and as such, the proposal in policy terms, we're assessing it as being 2 new dwellings in the countryside, which is why the application is a departure and is at committee tonight. So page 93 of the report details the advantages that this proposal brings over the Class Q fallback scheme, such as the reduction in built form in the countryside and the improvement in the quality of materials used and a reduction in the number of dwellings. So we've got a high quality scheme over the Class Q application, and we're recommending for approval with the conditions as detailed in the committee report, subject to the site departure notice expiring.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Summerskill.
Yes, my main concern on this is not for the removal of such an ugly building from the countryside, but we're majoring on commercial reuse policy LPR QD5 that we should be attempts to secure commercial reuse of a rural building. Listed in the many, omitted from listed in the many planning histories here is the approval of a new agricultural building for cold storage on this same Burford Farm development under 22501015. So somebody has got permission to build a new agricultural building about the same size as the one that's going to be knocked down, but we don't mention it in this status here, but we say no use could be found for the original one. I just find it odd that all the history and story isn't included.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Summergill. Cool. Could you elaborate on that at all?
Well, I suppose I'd say that would be a new building for, this is the Class Q was for the conversion. I mean, if you were to convert the building, this building, we would seek a commercial reuse, but in policy terms, as we're assessing it as being a new build dwelling, that doesn't apply here. In some of these circumstances, we do have appeal decisions where the inspector has given weight to that. We do have these Class Qs, so it's unlikely where residential use is available that is going to be coming forward for conversion.
Answer your question? Yes, okay. Okay, I was probably just going to add, I noticed some may say that the most attractive building, but I think it's actually in keeping with what was already there. And not to say that the applicant would do this, but I'm keen to put an informative on it to say that the reason if we do approve it tonight is because it is in keeping of what was originally there. So we then not sitting here in 6 months' time going over another application for 3 semi-detached houses in the countryside. So I'd propose from the chair as per the papers with that informative. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Summergill.
I would not agree with that because there are one conversion which you can just see at the back of the building there in the vernacular style, which is completely different to those industrial buildings. That's an old barn conversion.
Noted. Okay. So I've got a seconder. So with the urgent update, with the change to condition about the integrated back boxes and the informative about the reason we're approving is because the keeping with what's kind of already there. We're going to move to the vote. All for? Those against? Against? Those abstaining? 3 abstaining. So 7-4. 1 against. 3 abstaining. That is approved. Okay, moving on then. Item 19. Cool. There we go. Yeah, here's the last one. Come on, good. Welcome to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal is for the use of land as dog exercising fields, with 2 fields proposed. Field 1 is at the front and adjacent to Yelstead Lane, and Field 2 is to the rear of the site and between Field 1 and the existing dwelling at Little Farmhouse. The application site is in the countryside and Ken Downs National Landscape. However, it's only a 2-minute drive from Lordswood, which is in Maidstone urban area. The scale of the development is relatively small, considering the fencing of 2 meters or less, which would not require planning permission, as it is located away from the highway. Considering this and the type of the application, it is concluded that the application would conserve the scenic beauty of Ken Downs National Landscape. With the planning condition to submit a landscaping scheme, the development would not have a significant negative impact on the character and appearance of the countryside, and the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions. The urgent update for this application is to amend condition 5. Thank you.
Okay. For the applicant, we have Mr. Hamzik.
Yeah, good evening. The applicant set up the dog exercising enterprise Little Househead Hounds in October 2022 without having knowledge that planning permission is required for the change of use of land. This enterprise has been very successful. 2 separate fields adjacent to one another have been set up with all the necessary amenities such as secure fencing, fresh water, dog waste bins, dog agility equipment, etc. The site has been well maintained, grassland between large established trees, which provides perfect areas for dogs to run free and securely. It has only recently become apparent to the applicant that planning permission is required. So therefore, this application is to retrospectively regulise the site. Now, it should be noted that no trees have been removed from the site. There have been very limited changes to the site, and so it has retained its open and rural character. The enterprise has no impact on nearby neighbours. The site is very well screened by well-established soft landscaping, and the nearest neighbour is over 130 metres away. No external lighting is required, as the site only operates during daylight hours. The fields operate on 1-hour slots with 15-minute gaps either side to allow for crossovers. The use of the field is by advance booking only. Dog waste receptacles and hand sanitizers are in place on both fields. Water taps are available on both fields to ensure dogs do not dehydrate. The fields provide an essential secure dog exercising area for owners who have dogs that cannot be safely let off lead, allowing them to run free. The financial income from the enterprise assures that the applicant can continue to properly maintain this site. Should the enterprise cease, the site will still be in the same landscaping condition as it was prior to its commencement. We agree with the planning officer's assessment that the use is acceptable and that it conserves the scenic beauty of the Kent Downs National Landscape, having a minimal level of harm. However, we are surprised at the level of requirements set out in the proposed conditions, one of which is a noise management plan is being requested. Now, dog exercising has a very limited noise potential. The nearest neighbour is Russell Grange, some 130 metres away, which directly borders Yelstead Lane. It is only 95 metres from the M2 motorway. The next neighbour is Westfield Seoul, which is 680 metres away. There have been no objections within the past 2.5 years, and we would ask you to consider whether a noise management plan is really necessary. And secondly, details of measures that would be put in place when flooding is forecast is also being requested. Now, the site is within a flood zone 1, having a low probability of flooding. Now, does this imply that every future development, including household extensions and outbuildings not in a flood risk area, will now have to provide details of measures for when flooding is forecast? Again, we ask the committee to consider whether this condition is really necessary. Otherwise, we accept and agree to all the other conditions put forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, as ward councillor, firstly wish to acknowledge that this is a retrospective application. I note the comments made by the applicant. It seems that we need to draw this point to the attention of all future, indeed current business propositions for dog exercise. That notwithstanding, I'm also surprised not to see a comment from Boxley Parish Council. I will make some inquiries as to why it is that they haven't made a comment about this. That's more for my own notes. I'm delighted to see this rural business proposition and its regularisation here. I'm very much in approval of the comments at 6.30 and 6.31 on the economic development in a rural setting. This indeed is an ideal position for this business. It couldn't be more appropriate, it seems to me. 6.27, the comments on highways. Again, it is usually the case that we bemoan poor access to sites such as this. Given the way the entrance comes off of the highway at this point, it seems really a very safe prospect for that to be sited. I note the updates and very much approve the increasing to landscaping the species mix shown at 5C and at 5E. Those address comments that I would have otherwise made. My reasons for bringing this to attention of councillors now would be under two headings. One is I note the extensive comments around good design and design principles in the countryside, yet we have this plastic fencing inside the site. It is noted that it's not visible from the highway, and that seems to be used as a reluctant acknowledgement of its acceptability. I would just like to hear from officers as to whether or not that really is an acceptable compromise, given that we're talking about it being within the Kent Downs national landscape. Plastic fencing doesn't quite seem to meet the requirements to my mind, so I'd like some guidance on that. Lastly, I noticed that the applicants brought up the issue about flooding. Did I understand that he was contesting whether or not we're in flood zone 2, as it says in the papers, or flood zone 1, as his remarks seem to just note? But I think the point about the water, its fitness for the countryside, and indeed for animal welfare, all come around condition 3H. 3H says that there should be a grass cutting regime. It is evident from the helpful video clips in the application, which backs up the photograph, which we can see image 2 on page 105, that there's considerable wear to the grass. And given that this is a retrospective application, and given that the business is already established, I wonder whether we can ask officers to beef up those requirements to note either the effect of waterlogging or indeed drought, the quality of the countryside that is claimed to be being protected, and indeed animal welfare, that the care of the grass sward is higher than, will be higher in the future than is shown by the videos and also by the photograph image 2, where as soon as that gets wet, that doesn't really seem to be quite meeting any of those requirements. So those are requests for officers' comments on those things. But again, to sum up, in terms of giving the opportunity for dog exercising to happen away from domestic areas where we're concerned about public amenity, the concerns we've had about public space protection orders and so forth, this application is warmly welcomed, and with those specific things, I'm very much in favour of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Before I come to the other councillors, there's quite a list there, so I'll get the officer to come back.
Yes, if I can start off with the noise condition that the applicant mentioned. the noise condition is considering the occupants of a little farmhouse as a property could be rented out at a later time. So it is not for the neighboring property that is 100 or so meters away. It's for the property at Little Farmhouse. And regarding the fencing, if it's 2 meters or less, it's permitted development and it does not require planning permission. So
Okay, Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to start on 705. The application conserves the scenery of the Kent Downs National Landscape. You know what I'm going to say, because I say it every time, it's not our landscape, it's the nation's landscape. I don't see how it can conserve. I think it exists in. And I also notice, sorry, let me say one more thing first. You sent in your introduction that it's in the national landscape, but it's only just in the national landscape. So therefore, it isn't in the national landscape. I'm paraphrasing. It either is in it or it isn't, and it is in it. Let's sort of like, call it for what it is. Then I looked at the Kent Downs National Landscape Design Guide, and it's really clear. It says, avoid boundaries with straight lines, number 1. 2, avoid the use of chain link, weld mesh, close board, or other forms of fence associated with industrial sites. Number 3, avoid obstructive security fencing. And if we're gonna do what we should be doing with the Kent Downs National Landscape, we've got to walk the walk. We can't just ignore it and overwrite it. But having said that, I like dogs, I like dog walking businesses, etc. But I think we just need to be really, really mindful of our language. What's the mitigation to that? I think we need to make sure the landscaping plan is compellingly makes up for basically what's got there that's quite ugly. And I understand it's functional and it needs to be functional. And I think, the mitigation that, well, there's nobody close by doesn't work. It's in the national landscape. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. Firstly, I have to have a tree or shrub reference. And in here at 5E, there's a proposed species mix for the new hedge. And I suggest you need to substitute the 10% alder buckthorn for 10% purging buckthorn. And that's quite important because alder buckthorn
Covering the Asian update.
won't grow there. Is that tackled?
I believe so, as has been told.
So it's now purging. Oh, right. Yeah, okay. But in that species list, can we still have some purging buckthorn in it? That's, yeah.
Some Persian
Purging buckthorn, Rhamnus cathartica.
Okay.
It's a brimstone butterfly, caterpillars eat it, but it's very appropriate to Yelstead. However, I think the point has been raised by the 2 previous speakers in that this is a national landscape. The boundary treatments are very, very important. And also it's next to an ancient woodland. And we've got fencing here, which 1 is quite utilitarian, and 2, it goes right down to the ground. And in fact, it's kind of marketed as being secure. Well, if you're any wildlife trying to get out of the ancient woodland, you've got a bit of a problem coming up to a direct barrier. And that is quite significant, I suggest. So I would just like to hear a little bit more about the boundaries and the fencing, because yes, we can screen it with a hedge, but is that fencing appropriate, and are any changes required to that fencing to make it acceptable?
I think as the officer alluded, because of the height of it, it doesn't actually need planning permission. However, if we put an informative on it saying that when that's to be replaced, it being plastic, it will react with UV and it will over time. They'll be replaced with a stock fence, which is more in keeping with the countryside, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, I know there was mention of kind of mesh fencing, but even mesh fencing, because you can see through it and you can plant a hedge next to it, it's still secure. I just don't understand why we've got a solid barrier fence here, but I take on board that it will be looked at and it needs to be hidden by a hedge anyway. But I am concerned about the fragmentation of the and the barrier near the wood.
Councillor Summersgill.
Question asked here was about flood zone 2 and the applicant said flood zone 1. I'm at a bit of a loss looking at it on Google again as to why this is in flood zone 2 in that position. But perhaps you could check that.
Yes, when we were doing the assessment, it was found to be in flood zone 2.
Yeah, okay. You happy with that, Councillor Summersgill? Yeah. Councillor Reardon.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question, really. I think I'm minded to support the applicant's comments in relation to the noise survey. I can't see how you've got 1 or 2 dogs can possibly make the same amount of noise as a local heavy road. Is there a reason for that requirement? Or?
I can only say from having my own dogs, and actually having a noise complaint raised against me when I used to live somewhere else, that 2 dogs can make quite a noise apparently. So you do have to consider the neighbours for that. So, any other speakers? Do you have a proposer? Councillor Thompson. Okay. Is that with the species change that Councillor Harwood has suggested? Okay, in that case, I'm happy to second. Okay, all in favour? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, I also want to put the informative on that when the plastic fencing does come up for renewal, that mesh stock fencing is used to, yeah. Okay, all in favour? It's 10-4, those against? None against, those abstaining? 1 abstention. That is approved with the urgent update and the amendment to the condition and the informative. Thank you, councillors. Moving on. I was just going to, before we get into the appeals list, I was going to propose about changing the training a little bit. The previous training schedule was set on us doing underneath the 3-year or the third election. I don't believe it's a good use of officers' time to every year run through the same training to teach the same bunch of the same group of councillors. So I'm going to propose that this year everyone does the training and then it's top-up training, not full training to go forward. So unless anybody wishes to change your gun, Councillor Thompson.
I don't wish to contradict anything you've just said, Mr. Chairman. I would like to invite Mr. Jarman to reflect on a conversation that we had some months ago now about whether there was some the possibility for some summary paperwork, some kind of a handy aid, if you like. And I think at the time that you suggested that there might be sort of an aid memoir to a sort of a checklist that we might have at our desks when we're doing our preparations. So as a means of streamlining that refreshing process. Thank you.
Obviously, there's, as you can see from tonight's papers, there's different considerations for different types of application, but there is some sort of commonality. Yeah, we could have like a top 5 considerations, something like that.
Yeah. I find the papers that have been lodged, I think it's on Teams rather than or SharePoint, that for the training that we took part in, really useful to refer back to. Sorry, you can't hear. I find those papers on Teams that reflect the training we've taken really useful to refer back to. But I wonder also, just to supplement what you were saying about the top-up training, if there's any sort of like online, computer-based training that isn't necessarily fully relevant to MBC, but we could just do that in our own time, module by module?
Yeah, I'll do some research on that. The Planning Advisory Service does a lot of work around training, and there's probably something that they have, possibly the Planning Officers Society as well. I'll research it.
Especially if it has some marking on there as to how we're doing, that would be useful, so we can sort of like, see where we're at in terms of level of competence would be good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And sorry, you probably saw it. It took up a lot of headlines about the government, if you don't mind me saying, are looking to sort of curtail the powers of planning committee, aren't they? And they want to increase the number of delegated decisions. But I'm sure I saw something about having training for councillors, and I thought there was talk about a national training. I wouldn't call it an examination, but a sort of national module sort of thing.
We'll ask Justice to look into that, but
yeah,
our councillors agreed that the training should be basically you get once and then you get top up over the 4-year election period. Okay, that training program will come forward at the next meeting. There'll also be a section on there which I want on the 5-year land supply about the tilted. Was it tilted?
Tilted balance.
Tilted balance.
11D of the NPPF and footnote 8, to be precise.
That's more just so that when we're making decisions, we're taking that material consideration into account, but we have to train on it to actually say what that is. So we're not just saying it is, we haven't got a 5-year land supply, we're considering all aspects of it. Okay.
It's a material consideration, as the chairman said, and obviously every time we have an appeal, inspectors ask that question.
Moving on then to the appeals.
Yeah, I only came back from holidays on Monday, so I haven't gone through them in any detail, to be very honest. So generally, as you can see for yourselves, councillors, that it's pretty good on the whole. Some very good wins, if I can put it that way. The site close to you, Chairman, land adjacent to Hale Place, Cripple Street. And it was, I thought, not the easiest thing in the world to do, but we did win a gypsy appeal in High Corner. So still lost gypsy appeals, but nevertheless, we did win one. I think Councillor Thompson raised the point about appeal number 9. My understanding of that one, Rosewood Farm, Scragged Oak Road, was that it wasn't validated because of the sill form.
Any questions relating to the appeals?
May I invite a comment on item 14, please, as to what the reasons are for the allowance of the appeal, please?
We'd have to come back to you, Councillor Thompson. It'd be the householder team, Diane and Rachel. I'll pass on the.
I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Cox?
Is there any significance to appeal being in red on number 4? No, okay, just you'd fancied going colour.
No, we haven't become Manchester United fans. Okay. It's just a mistake.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Perry.
Thank you. Just to say congratulations on Monk's Lakes. Absolutely brilliant, if I may say so. It's been a long saga, this, for those who come to this new to the game, but I know it's been difficult, so well done to you and everybody involved with it. Fantastic.
I'd like to end on that, Councillor Perry, but I can't because obviously it's a retrospective appeal. So I'm afraid to say the saga will continue in some shape or form.
Okay, well, thank you, councillors. On that positive note, I shall bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.